Imagine a freezing Ice Age night. The wind screams outside, predators stalk in the shadows, and survival hangs by a thread. Yet inside a cave, two prehistoric lovers lie close, bodies warm, hearts steady. What happened between them after intimacy wasn't just passion, it was survival. Their bond, their instincts, and their rituals shaped whether they lived to see another sunrise. But why was sex not just an act of desire, but one of the strongest survival tools in the prehistoric world? Picture this: an Ice Age cave where the walls drip with condensation from melting ice and the howls of wolves echo in the distance. A small fire flickers, throwing shadows that dance like spirits across the stone. In this fragile bubble of warmth, two prehistoric lovers cling to one another, not just for desire, but for survival. We often imagine cavemen as crude, driven purely by instinct, but their intimacy was far more layered. Sex was never only about reproduction. It was an anchor in a world of chaos. After a day of grueling hunts or brutal cold, physical closeness became the only moment where fear gave way to comfort. Desire, in this context, wasn't a distraction from survival. It was survival. Welcome to Before Flame. If you enjoyed traveling back in time with me, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next journey into our ancient past. Now I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? It'll make me so happy to see our community connecting from all around the world. And most importantly, if this video make you just imagine the Stone Age, or actually feel what it was like to live as a caveman or cavewoman, share your thoughts below. I'm excited to read them all. Think about it. When the body engages in intimacy, stress hormones drop, tension melts, the heartbeat slows. In an Ice Age world where adrenaline often ran high, these moments of release may have been the only times the human body truly reset. For early humans, this calm wasn't luxury, it was a lifeline. And then there was the bond. Sex wasn't only between two individuals. It reinforced trust within small tribes. A mated pair didn't just share warmth, they shared responsibility, protection, and food. Their closeness radiated stability to the group. Imagine a world where predators lurked outside every cave and hunger was a constant threat. Knowing someone had your back, quite literally pressed against you in the dark, was an unmatched survival edge. So when we look at prehistoric passion, we can't reduce it to instinct alone. For them, intimacy was a biological, emotional, and social survival strategy. It was nature's most powerful reminder: you're not alone, you're safe, you live another day. The hunt may have been brutal, the winds outside bone-cracking, cold, but after intimacy, a new kind of warmth settled in, one that wasn't just physical. Imagine lying in a cave where the fire has burned down to glowing embers. The air is icy enough to sting the lungs, but two bodies pressed together radiate heat stronger than any animal hide. In this fragile cocoon of warmth, lovers weren't just surviving the cold, they were reclaiming peace. Modern science tells us that after sex, the body releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. For Ice Age humans, this wasn't some abstract chemistry lesson. It was life-altering. Oxytocin lowered fear, heightened trust, and forged emotional closeness. After sex, the world outside, wolves, hunger, freezing winds, still existed, but inside that cave, the bond between two lovers felt like a fortress, and this bond extended beyond the night. In small tribes where betrayal could mean death, trust was currency. Intimacy wasn't just pleasure, it reinforced loyalty. Sharing a bed of furs, exchanging warmth, whispering in low tones as the fire cracked, all of it deepened emotional security. These small rituals weren't luxuries, they were survival strategies, ensuring that partnerships lasted, children were protected, and food was shared fairly. Even the act of resting after passion mattered. With adrenaline spent and nerves soothed, lovers could slip into deeper, more restorative sleep. In a world where restlessness could leave someone weak during a hunt or inattentive to danger, that post-intimacy calm was priceless. Sleep, secured by love's afterglow, was as much a survival tool as fire or stone tools. In short, prehistoric intimacy carried more weight than we often imagine. For them, closeness wasn't just comfort, it was the very architecture of survival. Night, in the Ice Age, was never quiet. It was alive with danger. The distant howl of wolves, the snap of branches under unseen feet, the hiss of icy winds crawling through cracks in the cave. For a solitary human, this darkness wasn't just unsettling, it was terrifying. But for lovers who had just shared the most intimate of moments, fear transformed into something else. Lying pressed together, they were not just two vulnerable bodies, but a unit, a shield against the unknown. When fear crept in, touch reassured. A hand resting on a shoulder, a slow breath against the skin, the rhythm of another heartbeat, these small signs whispered, "You're not alone. We survived this together." This psychological armor was more than comforting. It was essential. Fear triggers stress hormones, making the body restless, keeping the mind on alert. Too much of that, and sleep becomes shallow, fragmented. But after sex and within the cocoon of intimacy, fear was blunted. Oxytocin and endorphins flooded the nervous system, calming the storm and allowing sleep to sink in deep. And deep sleep wasn't a luxury. It was the difference between waking strong enough to hunt or too weak to keep up. Even predators were less threatening in pairs. A couple sleeping close together could detect danger faster, one stirring at the slightest sound, while the other remained resting. Two pairs of ears, two pairs of eyes meant doubled vigilance when needed. Intimacy didn't just soothe the mind, it created a survival system. In the Ice Age, sex wasn't just about passion or reproduction, it was about creating a buffer against the most primal fears of the night. Love, in its rawest prehistoric form, wasn't just tender, it was tactical. After intimacy, there was another primal urge waiting to be satisfied: hunger. Cavemen and cavewomen didn't have the luxury of stocked pantries or late-night snacks. Every bite of food had been hunted, gathered, or preserved with immense effort. Yet the timing of their meals often lined up with the end of the day, making the bond between sex, food, and survival deeply intertwined. Imagine the scene. The fire still crackling after the day's hunt, its glow painting the cave walls in fiery reds and deep shadows. Around it, the tribe roasted chunks of meat, cracked open bones for marrow, and shared fatty pieces that promised energy through the long night. For a pair who had just shared intimacy, this moment wasn't only physical replenishment, it was emotional too. Eating together after closeness was another way of sealing trust, of saying, "I'll keep you fed, I'll keep you alive." Nutrition wasn't just background survival, it directly impacted sleep. Without a solid meal, the body would spend the night, shivering, jolted awake by hunger pangs. But with rich fats and protein stored in the body, lovers could drift into deep, restorative rest. Fat acted like a slow-burning fire inside them, keeping warmth consistent, while protein fueled repair and recovery from the day's grueling work. This cycle of passion, food, and rest was no accident, it was instinct. Cavemen learned that their strongest nights were those when they ended with intimacy, followed by nourishment, and finally the kind of sleep that gave them strength to rise again at dawn. Their survival didn't just depend on the hunt, it depended on how they closed their nights. Food wasn't just a momentary comfort after passion, it was security. In the harsh Ice Age, every meal had to be earned, and tomorrow's hunt was never guaranteed. That's why prehistoric lovers didn't only eat, they prepared for the future. Preservation became as essential as fire, ensuring that intimacy and rest weren't overshadowed by fear of hunger. Picture this: strips of meat hanging above smoky flames, absorbing the protective compounds of the fire. In colder climates, fresh. Cuts were buried in snow pits or hidden in icy crevices, nature's own freezer. Fat melted down and stored in animal skins or hollow bones became dense reserves of energy. These primitive methods meant that even when the hunt failed, lovers could still curl up by the fire with peace of mind, knowing there was food to last the night. This foresight shaped the way they slept. Without reserves, lying down in the cave would feel like lying in a trap of anxiety. Hunger would gnaw, and the body would resist slipping into deep rest. But when preserved food sat within reach, the mind calmed, the body relaxed, and intimacy could truly translate into recovery. It wasn't just about calories, it was about reassurance. Even small fallback foods, roots, nuts, or dried plants mattered. Though not as filling as fatty meat, they signaled safety. They reminded the couple that they weren't entirely at the mercy of the wild. This stability allowed them to rest longer, deeper, and together. For prehistoric lovers, survival wasn't a gamble of chance. It was strategy. Their intimacy wasn't followed by worry, but by planning. Their meals not just eaten, but stored. Love and foresight combined to create nights of both passion and peace. When the day's hunt ended and survival was secured, the fire became more than just warmth. It became a stage. Prehistoric lovers didn't eat in isolation, they gathered with their tribe, turning meals into rituals of unity. Around those flames, food, intimacy, and storytelling wove together, creating nights that were about far more than survival. Imagine a cave lit by flickering firelight. Shadows danced across stone walls as meat roasted on spits, fat sizzling and dripping into the flames. Men, women, and children huddled close, sharing marrow bones, roasted roots, and laughter. For a pair of prehistoric lovers, this wasn't just about filling their bellies. It was about belonging. In the circle of community, their bond deepened, reinforced by shared trust and collective strength. Meals were also moments of storytelling. After the hunt, tales of bravery, cautionary legends, and ancestral myths were told. These stories carried wisdom, eased anxieties, and reminded everyone that they were part of something greater than themselves. For lovers, this ritual was powerful. It grounded their relationship in a wider network of support and security. Passion might have been private, but survival was communal. Science today confirms what they lived instinctively. Communal meals reduce stress, increase oxytocin levels, and create a sense of safety. For prehistoric lovers, these shared feasts meant they could relax more deeply after intimacy. They knew they weren't facing the dangers of the night alone. Surrounded by fire, food, and fellowship, they drifted into rest with hearts steady and bodies warmed. Love wasn't separate from survival. It was stitched into the rhythm of the tribe. Every bite, every shared laugh, every flicker of firelight turned the night into something sacred, a celebration of both passion and endurance. When the sun dipped below the horizon, the Ice Age world grew dangerous. Predators prowled, icy winds bit through the dark, and silence carried its own weight of fear. Yet inside the cave, night didn't mean chaos. It meant ritual. Prehistoric people understood that survival at night required balance. Some kept watch, others rested, and within this rhythm, lovers found space to deepen their bonds. Imagine a cave where embers glow faintly. One figure sits awake, sharpening, a spear, eyes fixed on the cave's entrance. Nearby, others sleep huddled close, their breaths rising and falling together. In this alternating system of vigilance and rest, lovers found reassurance. Knowing that someone stood guard allowed couples to relax, whisper, or simply hold one another without fear. It was the earliest form of trust, not just between two people, but between the entire group. For prehistoric lovers, the night watch created intimacy by proxy. A man keeping guard wasn't only protecting the tribe, he was protecting his mate. A woman cradling her child or leaning against her partner knew that her safety was secured by shared responsibility. Love in this world wasn't private luxury, it was a communal investment, reinforced by the group's rituals. These patterns shaped their relationships. Unlike modern couples who might retreat into isolation, prehistoric lovers lived their intimacy interwoven with others' survival. The cave walls, the fire's glow, the watchful guard at the entrance, all of it became part of their nightly rhythm. Passion and protection were inseparable, stitched into the fabric of survival. The night wasn't just endured, it was navigated with intention. And in that navigation, love and trust became as essential as fire or food. As flames danced against stone walls, prehistoric nights often transformed into something more than survival. They became stages for storytelling. Around the fire, shadows grew long and voices carried tales of hunts, ancestors, and spirits unseen. For lovers, these nightly stories weren't just entertainment, they were emotional glue, weaving shared meaning into the fabric of their bond. Picture the scene, a woman's voice rising with passion as she recounts a day's hunt, children leaning in wide-eyed, elders nodding with approval. Beside her, her partner listens intently, pride flickering in his gaze. These narratives weren't just lessons, they were affirmations of identity, trust, and belonging. For lovers, sharing in these moments created a deep, emotional intimacy, a sense that their story was part of something much larger than themselves. Myths and legends told by firelight also strengthened bonds. When lovers heard the same tales of gods, spirits, or heroic ancestors, they internalized the same values, fears, and hopes. Belief systems built in these nightly rituals gave couples a shared worldview, one that carried them through hardship. In many ways, storytelling was the prehistoric equivalent of today's love language. It offered comfort, reassurance, and a reminder that their struggles and joys were part of a collective journey. Even silence carried weight. Lovers could sit shoulder to shoulder, gazing into the fire as others spoke, and find in that moment a connection deeper than words. The crackling flames, the rhythmic voice of an elder, and the safety of community lulled them into a state where emotional and physical closeness naturally thrived. Through story, lovers discovered not only their roles in survival, but also their place in each other's hearts. And night after night, firelight became a witness to intimacy that went beyond touch. It was emotional permanence. When the last ember dimmed and conversations faded into silence, prehistoric nights gave way to the most vulnerable act of all: sleep. For lovers, this wasn't simply lying down to rest, it was entering a shared state of trust where their very lives depended on one another. Unlike today, where bedrooms can be private sanctuaries, Stone Age couples rarely slept alone. Families and groups gathered in clusters, wrapped in furs, huddled together for warmth and safety. Yet even in that communal setting, lovers found ways to claim a unique closeness. Perhaps it was the way they nestled back to back, preserving heat against the icy air. Or maybe it was how they instinctively positioned themselves, protective partners lying nearer the cave entrance, while the other rested deeper inside, shielded from danger. Sleep itself became an extension of their bond, their bodies silently communicating protection, trust, and care. This nightly ritual wasn't just about rest, it was about survival. When predators prowled or storms howled outside, lovers weren't only guardians of each other, they were guardians of the group. Their unity and vulnerability reinforced the idea that together they were stronger, braver, and more enduring than they could ever be alone. Even science today hints at the benefits. Sleeping close to a trusted partner regulates breathing, lowers stress hormones, and fosters a sense of safety. Cavemen didn't have the language for this, but they had the instinct. They knew that love wasn't separate from survival. It was survival. And so night after night, firelight faded, hearts slowed, and Stone Age lovers drifted together into the rhythm of sleep. Not just as partners in affection, but as anchors of community and guardians of life. Prehistoric love was never just about intimacy. It was about endurance, trust, and survival. Every glance, every touch, every shared night by the fire carried weight far beyond passion. These lovers weren't only bound by desire, they were bound by necessity, by the relentless challenges of the Ice Age, and by the instinct to protect one another against a world that showed no mercy. In their union, they discovered strength, the warmth to endure frozen nights, the courage to face predators, and the hope to carry their lineage into an uncertain future. What we often see as simple affection was, for them, a survival strategy written into the very fabric of human evolution. Their love wasn't fragile, it was forged in hardship, tested by scarcity, and proven in every night they survived together. And perhaps that is why thousands of years later we are still here. The legacy of bonds so strong they could outlast anything.